Oh, I gotta see who's saying hi. Nobody yet. Hold on. Emily, comment something real quick. See what pops up.
Donna says, hi, Phil.
Hi, Donna. Hi, Rachel. Eyeball. You're gonna look deep into my soul today. Okay. Good morning. All right. We'll give a minute for everybody to jump on. In the meantime, I'm going to continue to refresh my memory. Trying to recreate the sounds that we missed yesterday from the animals eating. I just like... That's called acting. You over-dramatize stuff. I just hope I don't have gas. We don't want to over-dramatize that.
Todd says, hey, Phil.
Phil says, hey, Todd. That was good though, right? I don't even know which Todd. You know how many Todds I know? If my name been a Todd, I know.
Slagowski.
The cool Todd. Actually, all the Todds I know are cool.
Hi from Miles
well,
and
except,
Chandler.
what? Who?
Hi from Miles and Chandler.
Miles and Chandler. Trying to picture Miles and Chandler. Don't know. Miles and Chandler? Because Chandler could be a name.
Rachel Brown said, coffee for the win.
See, here's the assumption that this is full of coffee. Okay, this is acting too. Yeah. Do you know how I'm able to live with 200 plus animals and have 5 kids? It's not just coffee. I think it's time. It's time to get started. So I'm going to put down one of my most influential and memorable books and useful books. And even to this day, I got to be honest, every once in a while I reference it. This is the book I'm talking about right here. Can you read that? That's right. This is, for me, growing up, was the Reptile Bible, if you will. This has all the information that I grew up. This one right here, I know you're looking at, that's a nice book. It looks like it's been, laid in the water and peed on by animals and all kinds of stuff. That's because I've had this book a long time. I'm actually looking in here, and let's see what date this book is. Y'all remember books, right? I know we have some young viewers here. For those that are young viewers, this is called a book, and it has these things called pages. And each page, like in this one, some has pictures. That's the kind I like. Some has words. There's scholarly people that like words too. But according to this, this particular one, actually 1989. So this isn't the original one that I had, mostly because the original one that I had wasn't really mine. I checked it out from the library. I paid a lot of money to my public library in late fees. But in any case, we call it the Green Book. So.
The title was flipped, it's mirrored. So if you could read what the title
Oh
of the book
my
is.
goodness, I forgot. Sorry folks about using the Apple products and it completely changing your day. So here, try it this way. Is that better? Just kidding. This is the Audubon Society Field Guide to North American Reptiles and Amphibians. It's the longest title I know of any book anywhere, even longer than the word Leviticus. The Audubon Society Field Guide to North American Reptiles and Amphibians. I will tell you, I guarantee any of you that have ever heard of this book, you simply call it the same thing I did growing up, right? The Green Book. Because let's be honest, how many other green books are there? Well, this particular one kind of starts my story, really, as I started with an interest in wildlife. I get the question quite often, how did you end up doing what you're doing, and how long have you been doing it, and a lot of those sort of things. So here is basically my story. Now, if you do have some questions, and if I miss something and don't answer specifically into this area, feel free to ask. I mean, you're part of the interview process here. But first off, I was not born Wildman Phil, okay? My parents, they may or may not have been hippies, but they didn't go that far, okay? Actually, my name was Philip, and that's where the Phil part came from, and hence we added to it later. But as a young child, growing up, I first off was born in Arizona. Soon after I was born, I moved. Well, my parents moved, and I went with, because that's what you do at that age. I went to another state, actually, one that some of you may have heard of. It's called California. And we lived there for about 9 months, but I wasn't even but like a year old, all right? So I don't remember that. It doesn't count. I am an Arizona native. I've lived in Arizona ever since then. Lived in Tucson, Phoenix, metropolises like Coolidge, and so on. Now I reside right between Phoenix and Tucson, about halfway between the two, out in the middle of the great stinking desert. But when I was a young lad, I think every good story should start with that, and I was living in Phoenix at the time, in elementary school, and I started my career at that time, didn't even know it. Basically, I had an interest in those things that seemed kind of creepy and crawly to me. The things that I was always one of those kind of wondering, is that true? Is this fact or is this fiction? And it made sense when we got to that part of school and teachers were explaining fiction versus nonfiction and that sort of thing, because I had an interest in these creatures that kind of seemed maybe scary to most, different to me, and possibly misrepresented. I have to be honest, my original interest was in sharks. I lived in southern Arizona, so that didn't go anywhere, and that ended up shifting over to something we did have in southern Arizona, snakes. And my original interest was in snakes. And I remember in first, second, third grade that we had to do this thing where you read books and then you write reports about it. They call them book reports, right? So I learned very early on, I could cheat the system. If you have to read a book and then write about it, read about something you like. So that's what I did. I started checking out books on sharks and then went, yeah, this is kind of fun. But wait, snakes are interesting. And I was reading all kinds of things about those kind of creatures. And it's funny because the books back then, it shows you how old I am, they were a little different. It was promoted as nonfiction. I'm reading a book on snakes, and they were talking about these amazing snakes. Snakes like the hoop snake. That's right, a snake that lived on hillsides, and if somebody got close and scared it, it would bite onto its tail, turn itself into a hoop, and roll down the hill. And that was its escape method. And I thought, this is incredible. Then I started thinking, how would that work exactly, And then there was other things that were actually, ended up being myths. Let's just cut to the chase. I wanted to know more about these creatures. I'd see pictures of people holding like 25 snakes, and I'm like, how can you do that and not die? And then, of course, I'm reading about it, and like, oh, grass snakes, garter snakes, harmless snakes? And so that's how everything kind of started. Then, when I was in fourth grade, whatever age that is, I think it was like 8, 10, I don't know, I was a fourth grader. Okay, we moved out in the middle of nowhere. We were actually a rural area of Coolidge, Arizona. That's right, Coolidge, Arizona, which is a little tiny town, and it was too big for us. All right, so we lived out in the middle of the desert, surrounded by desert. It was like literally three houses, because you had to borrow sugar from somebody, so you couldn't have neighbors too far away, I guess, and in desert. And so I would spend my days running around because they had not invented even the Atari gaming system yet, let alone the internet or any of that. So I'm out finding these animals. We ended up moving to another semi-rural location. By semi-rural, I mean there was more than 3 houses. There was a few dozen. But I would run around the desert seeing all these animals and wondering what kind of animal is that. That's when I started visiting my local library. Sometimes when we go into town, that's what you do when you live rurally, once or twice a week, you go into town. My mom had to go shopping. She'd drop me off at the library, and I would read books on, yeah, that's right, snakes, lizards, owls, desert creatures. And one of the ones I started with was that tribe, the Green Book, the Audubon Society Field Guide to North American Reptiles and Amphibians, because in here, being a field guide, it showed me all the amphibians and the reptiles, all the lizards that I was seeing, all the snakes I was seeing, and all the lizards and snakes that I read about in the books that I wasn't seeing. And it got me interested in what we had in other areas as well. Well, that one was checked out, as I already mentioned, a lot, not necessarily returned in a timely manner and so on. Luckily, there wasn't a whole lot of other people checking it out, so I could leave it there for a week and then come back and check it out for another 2 months or whatever. But then as things progressed, and I read not just that book, but that one was helpful for me to learn what lizard was I looking at. Oh, we found this snake out there. I wonder what that is. And then I started trying to keep these animals. I had a few exotic pets. I say exotic because when they were born in captivity, they just weren't a dog or a cat, so they're listed as exotic. And as a small child, our family actually kept gerbils. I did have a dog. My first animal ever was a dog. Let me back up. When I was like, 2-3 years old, we had a dog. And then we had some cats and dogs and things. But then we got gerbils. I raised gerbils. We had baby gerbils. They grew up to big gerbils. And I had to learn about gerbils to be able to keep the gerbils and that sort of thing. And then I got really interested in snakes. And I was like, oh, I should catch a snake and bring it home. And my mom was like, hey, don't ever do that. No, you cannot do that. It's a snake. You don't do that. And I went, okay. And so I kept gerbils. And we would go out and find toads, and we were out in the wild kind of learning about these things. And so basically I wanted a snake. We moved to another location, even more rural, more pristine for finding creatures. And it was at that time that I had spent years now literally reading about all these creatures and praying every single night that God would change my mom's heart, that she would allow me to keep a snake. Yes, I know, but that's the prayers of little boys. But eventually it worked. And one day I was out in the desert and I found a little snake called a night snake. And a night snake, you should look it up. If you have a green book, they're actually in here. They're on page, whatever. Night snake is a small snake. They don't get more than maybe 12, 15 inches, well, 18 really if you measured them. But they're a little tiny snake. And they're very nondescript. They're not dangerous at all. Although I did find out through more research and reading about them that technically they have a mildly toxic saliva and a large rear teeth, and that's how they kill their food. But it's not harmful to humans in any manner. So I got this little snake that ate lizards, and I brought it home, and I went to my mom and I said, Mom, could I keep this little snake? And my mom says, I think you can, but you have to keep it outside. I'm not allowing that into my house. And I said, okay. I was just ecstatic. I could keep this thing. I set up a place outside where it was nice and shady and didn't get too hot, because night snakes are, nocturnal. You already figured that part out, right? So the night snake lived outside. They like to hide during the day underground and different things. So I've got this whole thing set up. I got this snake. I'm out catching lizards to feed it. Watching it eat, that's the first science for a boy, right? I'm like, ooh, look at this, he's swallowing this. And to this day, I still am impressed when a snake eats something like that. But I kept this night snake. Now, I'll be honest, I've never clarified with my mom. I don't know that I want to, but I often wonder, was it my mom was so tired of me asking that she finally said, sure, hoping that it would die, I'd get over it and never ask again? Or did my mom know that I had spent years researching, and she knew then that I knew what I was doing and that I knew all about this snake? I don't really want to know. I don't think my mom would lie to me, but she might anyway, all right? But really, whatever the reasoning was, I got to keep my first snake. Well, then that snake turned into another snake, and then it got to be winter time, and I told my mom, I said, look, here's the thing. I still have this snake I've been taking such good care of, and nobody's died, and it's great, but I've had it so long, according to the books, the other books. I can't take it out and let it go now because it's a domesticated animal, and I can't leave it outside or it's going to freeze and die. And then you're going to have murdered an animal, and it's not nice. So I need to bring it into my bedroom. I'll leave it in my bedroom. It's been a secure thing. It's not going anywhere. And my mom said, okay, yeah, as long as it doesn't get out, you're fine. And so I did. I had that. About that same time, I started then catching another snake, and then it moved into the bedroom, and then I set up this tank over here, and then I got frogs, and I got salamanders, and I got this, and I had a horned lizard, and another snake, a coach whip. That was one. That was the first real snake, all right? Because coach whips, they're just aggressive, right? They're a very aggressive snake. They don't have a venom. They're very fast, and they're very bite your face offy, okay? So I was like, hey, you know what? I got this in here. I got to feed it mice now. I'm out buying mice. I'm doing odd jobs at a paper route. I'm making money just to feed this snake, correct? Well, at this point in my life, I now had gerbils. I had a few lizards. I had a king snake. I had a coach whip. I had some shed skin from the snakes. I had skin from a rattlesnake, because keeping a live rattlesnake, not something I suggest anybody try. But I had these things, and our next door neighbor was a first grade teacher at one of the local elementary schools. Jan Schaefer, by the way, in case anybody knows her, or if you happen to be watching, Mrs. Schaefer. She was our next door neighbor when I was 13 years old. And one day, she came over to me and she says, hey, Phil, I noticed you have all these creatures, and these are very interesting creatures, and I was kind of wondering if maybe you could take a day off of school and you could go with me and bring these with and teach my kids about them. And I went, okay. I'd already noticed at that point in my life, running into many people of all ages, that a lot of people didn't know a whole lot about the animals that they found in their backyard that they were living with. And so, and what they did know was false anyway. By the way, in case I haven't clarified enough, hoop snakes, totally made up, not a thing, okay? But people thought all kinds of different snakes were dangerous, or that this lizard would throw his tail in the face and this one would beat somebody with it, all kinds of things, right? Every snake is deadly and dangerous and that sort of thing. Well, that's what most people knew, if they knew anything. And I had people go, I found this baby Gila monster, we're all going to die. That's a banded gecko, And so I said, you know what? I would love to do that. I'll go in, I'll teach these first graders the truth about these creatures, not knowing that first graders don't know anything about any animals, really. Well, nowadays, that's changed, because I've been doing my job, and others as well, more so others. But I went ahead and I went with her that day, did a short little presentation in her classroom. Well, guess what? I was stuck there with her all day, because I didn't have a car, and even if I did, I couldn't drive at 13. So the other first grade teachers come in, Mrs. Pettinger. She's like, hey, that was great. So what you do? You got these. Can you come over here? I'm like, what else am I going to do today? Read Go Dog Go again with the first graders? No. So I went in, I did a show in there. And then the other first grade teacher, oh, you want to come in here? And in the middle of one of these, the local newspaper shows up. A reporter from it, not the whole thing. It's not like they moved into the school. So we had a reporter show up there, and the guy takes my picture doing this show, and I'm like, hey, this was kind of cool. I feel like I made a difference here, and now these kids know something. I didn't know at the time that we could have just given them a book and said, read this, but that it was more exciting for them to see this creature. And then they had questions they didn't even know they had. And they're wondering more about this. And I'm telling them things about the horned lizard. This thing can squirt blood out of his eyes. And they're like, you're making this up. I'm like, no, I have researched this. It sounds fake, but it's real. Hoop snakes, not real. Blood squirting from horned lizards, definitely a thing. We'll cover that in another episode, by the way. Yeah, because you all want to see it and you want to know what I'm talking about, right? So, long story short, at the end of the day, I go home, having done my very first live animal show. I still was Phil at that time, not Wildman Phil, okay? But I had done my very first animal show. And the next day, guess what? Newspaper comes. Boom! I'm out there getting ready to deliver newspapers, and guess who's on the front page of the paper? Some goofy-looking kid with a horned lizard. Yeah, it was me. I was like, whoa, okay. And they even spelled my name right, which has changed over the years. But it was great. It listed some of the different animals on there that I showed the kids and this and that. And I was like, wow, okay. I really felt like I made a difference. And of course, then I started having these aspirations of maybe doing this full time someday. And every Sunday afternoon, you know, I'm sitting in front of the TV and I'm watching Marlin Perkins, The Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom. And I'm thinking, wow, this is amazing. This guy's out there traveling the world, and I'm learning so much from him. And I'm learning things like, don't get bit by snakes. Always have a sidekick to do that. Thanks, Jim. And things like that, right? And I'm going, this is great. And they're building up going, next week, Marlin's going to wrestle an anaconda. And I'm like, this guy's nuts. It's great. But wait a minute. Is he going to live? We'll see. And, of course, I watched it. And, of course, spoiler alert, he didn't die from the anaconda. They're not really going to try and kill you, all right? But, and actually, let's be honest, him wrestling it, we'll go with that. He was in the water with it, wrestling it, all right? My buddy Coyote Peterson is way worse with, like, garter snakes, though. But, I mean, he does other things, don't get me wrong. But anyway, I end up learning at that point, wow, okay, I made a difference. And I'm learning these things, and I'm like, I would like to be the next Marlin Perkins. I would like to do that. But I'm just a little poor kid that has a couple animals and a weird interest, and I live in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of Arizona. And I'm like, this isn't going to happen, you know, these big-time people that do things, you know, I don't know how they do it, but they do. And so while I was still doing that, I got into a little hobby, because believe it or not, that wasn't enough, all right? I started doing tricks on my bicycle. It was like a big thing. It's called freestyle, bicycle freestyle. And so I got into doing that in my time. But I still had animals, and I was still learning and reading about them and that sort of thing. In fact, I had this great idea, because having a trick bike costs money, more so than a paper route. You know, I took care of it. But I thought, hey, you know what? What if I use these two things together? And so I opened a zoo. Yeah. The computers had come out at this point, and I'd saved up my paper route money, and I had this top-of-the-line Commodore 64. Yeah, and it was cool. It had an external drive with a cassette. But I had a printer, and they called it dot matrix. They went click, 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 and so on. So I could print out little things, flyers and little signs and stuff for my zoo. I'm about 90% sure it was called Arizolia, because I'm making words up that kind of sounded cool. Arizolia Desert Zoo, right? And so I had the area in my backyard where I was able to keep my animals. I built this big natural enclosure out of plywood and some stuff, and I had snakes living in there. And then I had a little corner area with a little pond that I built, and I had a frog in there, and every time you came, you looked in there, the frog was down at the bottom, but you could see him down there, and it was fake. I used a fake frog in my zoo, right? But I was like 13, 14 years old. And but I had real toads, all right, because that's what we had in the area. And I had lizards and things, and that was it. And I may have had a dog or a cat too. But in any case, this thing was so successful. I was charging like 25 cents a person, all right, to come in. And I ended up, after the first week, I made 50 cents. I don't know what two dumb people on my block decided to come see this thing, but thank you for your support, whoever you were, all right? Because after the first month, I had made 50 cents. This same original 50 cents. And at the end of the summer, I had made 50 cents. And but everybody in my neighborhood had pretty much seen my zoo. Yeah, I was a terrible businessman at that time, right? All my neighbors come over and I'm showing them all my stuff, and I keep forgetting to charge them money. I'm pretty sure that the paper cost me $1.50, you know. But anyway, that was my first dabbling into that. But that's also when I realized that people like to learn about these things. So we ended up moving to another house. I ended up building this nice pond area where I had all kinds of things. At this point now, I got an iguana, and this guy ended up almost 6 feet long. His name was Maestro. It was my first iguana, big green iguana, common green iguana. Had a harness on him and a leash, and you can't really take iguanas for walks. They're climbers, and so you try to walk him down the sidewalk, he sees a tree. It's really a mess, but But I ended up having him for a number of years. And in fact, once I got old enough to drive and skilled in driving, well, skilled enough to be able to do it. Some people argue about that today. But and I had purchased my own truck and things and was driving. I had Maestro, my iguana. And I actually had in my truck on the back seat up by the light, there was a little ring that I put in. And then I had a little clippity thing on the leash for the iguana. And I put him on the back seat. I would clip it on there so he wouldn't jump out the windows and stuff. And I would drive around. He loved it, sitting in the sun, driving around, me and him hanging out. And I also found out that if you pull into the gas station or the convenience store or whatever, and you get out and you have a big iguana sitting in your back window, at least at that time in life, nobody would mess with your vehicle. People were like scared to death. I might have, I had a pit bull, or whatever, an alligator. I've got this iguana sitting back there, and people walk up and see it, and they'd go way around and stuff. And yeah, I mean, leave your wallet right there, window open. Nobody's going to touch it, right? Loads of fun on that. But at that same time, I had a truck, I had some animals, and I had some interest in the bicycling still. And so I got really heavy into that. We had a little trick team. We'd perform in parades in it, little parking lot things for different whatevers. Well, when you get heavy into something like that, like any sport, there's superstars in the sport and so on. And so one of the things I used to have was I'd go get magazines. That's how we did it back in the day, right? I know it's backwards, so I'll give you a minute. It says BMX Plus. Yeah, that's BMX Plus freestyling. There's freestyle magazines. There's other ones dedicated to the sport of freestyle, right? And so I got into knowing who all these superstars were that could do these amazing tricks. And one of them was this guy right here. Yeah, that's Dino De Luca. Yeah, this guy was #1 in the world for a few years at riding ramps with freestyle, right? And so, you learn these names. Oh, Dino De Luca, this guy, I'm looking in here. Oh, look at that picture. That guy's got some vert, doesn't he? Anyway, so I'm reading these magazines once in a while, and I end up having one of my freestyle team members, David Valle, shout out to you, a very important part of my life. He was in doing the same thing one day at our local, I think Fry's or Smith's or whatever we had back then, and he was over there looking at the magazines and trying to decide which one he wanted to buy that time. And there was a girl in there looking as well, and she and him get to talking, and he's like, it's kind of weird to see a girl looking at a freestyle magazine. And he says, so do you freestyle? She's like, no, my boyfriend does. And he's like, oh, really? That's interesting. Who is he? Maybe, I know him, it's just kind of a small community in this small town. And she's like, yeah, my boyfriend is Dino De Luca. And he's like, right, whatever. She's like, no, he is. And he's actually out touring right now. He's from California and stuff. But, and long story short, David tells me this story. I met this girl, this girl, she was barely older than us, but it still looks like 18 today, all right? Shout out to Lori. But in any case, she comes in, he tells me the story. He says, hey, I met this girl, says she knows this famous guy, and sometimes he comes through Arizona and Casa Grande and so on. And I'm like, that whole thing of my life of, really? And of course, I want to check on this stuff, right? So I do what anybody would do. I found out later that almost nobody would do, that I was some weirdo. I wrote a letter, handwritten letter, to Dino De Luca. Hey, Dino, this is the story we heard. If you're ever in Casa Grande, here's my phone number. Give me a call, right? Yeah. And I sent this letter in here, care of Dino Products, that's his sponsor, to their address and so on. And was like, okay, we'll find out, right? Totally understanding that I'm never going to hear anything. But now this guy knows there's some girls out there telling stories about him. Well, I didn't know that's like a thing for superstars, that every girl's in love with them, and they probably have stories, right? So, months later, like a year or something, I'm at my house one day, and the telephone rings, because that's how things worked back then. It was one phone in the house, way around the corner, and my mom answers it, and she's like, yeah, hold on just a second. She's like, hey, Philip, it's for you. And I'm like, okay, and I go over there, and I get on the phone, and I kid you not, the guy on the other side of the phone is, hey, Philip, how's it going? This is Dino De Luca. And I said, who is this? I thought my friends were messing with me, but I didn't recognize the voice at all. And my mom is sitting there like, what's going on, And I'm like, what, who? And And the long story short, he was in town. He says, hey, I heard you like to ride. You guys want to meet up and ride? It made my month, my life at that point. I'm like, some superstar guy got a hold of me, and he wants to hang out with me and go ride. So we did. And we went out, we rode around, we found out that we were not as good as we thought we were, which we knew. But I found out at that time that superstar that was the top of his sport, that I dare I say idolized, and many people did, knowing this guy, that's when I found out he's just a regular guy that was really good at doing tricks on a bike. And that's when I realized that literally anybody can do what it is that they're good at doing, that they want to do. And so Dino basically changed my life. I started then asking questions more and going, hey, if you're friendly to somebody famous and they're super cool or halfway cool, they're just normal people. And so you get to know these people. And he never knew the difference that he was making, maybe at least in my life. I don't know. But he broke me out of that going, anybody can do what it is that they want to do. And I thought, I can be a superstar freestyler. No, that's probably not the route I want to go. Well, we're getting to the end of high school about this time. I got to figure out what to do with the rest of my life. And I'm thinking to myself, I've already been tricking this system anyway, doing the whole, book reports on books that I like. So if I got to do something for a living, I like working with animals. That's what I'll do. I'll trick the system again. And I'll go out and I'll make a living working with animals. We're back to the Marlin Perkins things, right? So I go ahead and decide that's what I'm going to do. I have this new mindset that anybody can do it if you want to. And even some little kid that's been doing nothing his whole life but opening a 50-cent zoo, total income of the lifetime of the zoo, 50-cent zoo, can do this. And so I decided, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and contact some of these schools in the area. I wrote out a letter. Actually, I typed it out and then printed it, sent it out to different schools around the area, and I said, look, I've got a bunch of live animals. A lot of them are native stuff. A lot of kids don't know about them. If you want, I can bring them and show them to your kids. And I sent this letter out about the same time that I was starting college to get my degree in biology, zoology, because, if you're going to cheat the system, do something you want, right? So sure enough, I go ahead and I send these letters out, and I actually have some teachers call me back. One of them was Mrs. Pettinger. She remembered like 5 years earlier when I had been there with my animals. She's still teaching first grade, and I'm like, lady, you need to kind of promote eventually. Anybody who's in first grade for more than 4 years is probably... But anyway, wonderful lady. And she says, hey, I remember you doing that. Would you like to... Well, now I've got like 15, 20 animals, not just gerbils and a shed skin of a snake to pass around, right? And so I brought it back and did that. Then I had some other schools get a hold of me. And then one day, one of the school principals said, hey, what does it cost for you to come bring these animals and teach our kids? And I went, people pay money for this? Which was the greatest news I'd ever heard, because it cost me a lot of money to feed these animals and to house these animals. And I'm just a college kid. I had more than a paper route at this time. I actually had a real job. And I'm going, wait a minute. You pay money for this? And so I told him, $10. I don't know. I don't even remember what I charged. It was ridiculous. Probably less than what it cost me to feed my animals like crickets every week now or something. I don't know. But I'm going, oh my gosh, this is the greatest thing. And so I did that. Then as I was going to school and college, I started doing a few presentations here and there at some of the schools. And I found out that at summer camp when I was a kid, and we were on the hayride, and everybody on the whole entire little tractor trailer thing was laughing because I was telling jokes and things, that you could do that talking about animals. And that's when I started realizing that people would rather be entertained than educated. And that it was actually a valuable thing to come in with a live animal, something that they can see. Because every lizard in a book is this big. Yeah, that's the size of the picture in there. And you don't know, is it really this big? And so looking at this creature and sometimes smelling the creatures. Sorry to the kids at St. Anthony's that had the iguana pee all over the place. Yeah, but the creatures, you're learning so much more by seeing how they move and what they feel like, touching them and all this. And then, if you make it fun, Yeah. So I'm like, hey, this is working out great. Well, I'm taking a desert biology class with one of the greatest men to ever live, Bill Kinnison. Bill Kinnison taught biology at Central Arizona College when I was there. How the timing on the time continuum met up, I don't know. But it was one of the best things ever because I'm in desert biology class, and it's, desert biology, right? And one of the things about this class was at the end of the semester, everybody had to give a presentation of some sort that had something to do with desert biology. And it was kind of up to us to figure out what to do, right? Well, Bill was a botanist. He knew all about desert biology, but botany was his main thing. So I learned a lot in that class because I didn't know a whole lot about botany at that time. By the way, botany, glossary word of the day, it means plants. He was a plant guy, right? And not a vegetarian. That's a little bit different. But in this class, I decided at the end of the semester, I would do a little presentation on the defensive adaptations of desert animals. I think that's what I named it. Something like that. Basically, I brought in some of my animals, and I did this little presentation on how it is that animals protect themselves in the desert. And I brought in a chuckle that blows up with air, and I brought the toad that has the poison. You get the idea. So I ended up getting an A in the class. Ooh, shocking. And which just means that I learned like what an ocotillo is. Okay, no, it was great. But that class itself right there and that meeting of this man ended up changing my life. Because first off, the next semester, he was so impressed with this that he actually used his staff scholarship to help me through the next semester, which at that time, like I said, I was spending all my money on animals, and financially helped me tremendously. But it also helped encourage me to understand that what I was doing was something that was good. Well, he also did a little moonlighting through the college through a program called Elder Hostel, which was a program for, at that time, 60 and older people that came in from all over the world to places to learn. It was an educationally based travel program. And so he taught classes on the plants of the desert. Well, he got contacted by the person in charge and said, hey, you know what? We want to do a desert intense program. These people are here for a week. We want the 3 classes to be the people of the desert, the plants of the desert, and the animals of the desert. And we have some wonderful people that can do the people of the desert. We have you that would do the plants. Do you know anybody that could do animals of the desert class? And Bill Kinnison said, I have this kid. He's one of my students, but I think it would work. Yeah. And I did one of the hardest things I've ever done in my whole entire life. And I've done some pretty hard things. I accepted because he came to me and he explained what it was. He said, you just need to come in, talk about these desert animals and stuff. It's what you like to do anyway. And it's only like a 3-hour here, 3-hour there. You only need about 10 hours, whatever. And he finished with, and it pays money. And I went, oh yeah? I'm a college kid, paying money, feeding animals. Okay, I think I can do this. And I decided to say yes. And I went in during my very first class for this, and I stood in front of these people sitting here that I found out as I'm listening to everything go on, the majority of the people in here are retired educators. College professors, elementary school teachers, high school administrators, and I'm like a 20-year-old college kid standing in front of this group going, okay, yeah, that may have been a terrible decision. Who am I, this, little young college kid, who am I to teach these people anything? These people have lived their life, they've experienced everything, they're educators, right? And I said, well, here's the deal, and I did it, and when I got done, I had those people coming going, that was one of the greatest things we've ever seen. You're a natural, this and that. And definitely I was like, oh my gosh, this thing actually worked. And I'm going, okay, now what? Well, it ended up to where they did this thing pretty often. So I got a fairly regular gig and ended up to where I did more and more, started coordinating some programs, and that was my first step into doing this. I was able to then put more effort into doing the school presentations, and the more I combined those two, the more I realized I could be that Dino De Luca. I could be that superstar Bill Kinnison. I could be changing lives and helping people. Helping them learn about these animals, helping them know that they too can do whatever they want. And it's progressed from there. So I've done a few other things over the years working the programs. I got to see a lot of the areas and henceforth more animals because I was leading programs at the Grand Canyon, at all these different places around, and it made contacts and so on. And as things went on and progressed, I eventually got to doing more and more. Word got out. I got better at what I was doing. I'm almost worried, but I think it might be really funny to watch like one of the presentations that I did in elementary school back in like the 90s when I was first starting. And just see it, how terrible I was back then. Now, 20-something years later. So maybe we'll do that. We'll have some fun with that. But with all that being said, those were the highlights of this. And what I found out through this was that, yes, there are people out there that are at the top of their world. I've got to meet some amazing people. I have friends that are really a list that I would be haughty and egotistical to say, I know this guy, this guy, this guy, and this guy. And, we text each other and we talk and stuff, because that's not the point. The point is, I'm hanging out with these guys who everybody says, oh, these are superstars. And those guys, I'm probably on their list, which is really weird. I'm just a guy. I'm a guy who likes animals. I'm a guy who was so interested in them that I was reading about them and doing what I could, turn that into going and getting my degree, and turn that into a career. So I'm simply just a little boy who never grew up. Yeah, I'm still out there bringing lizards home in my pockets, and I do take them out of my pockets before they go in my pants, go in the laundry room now. That's very important, by the way, okay? And, of course, there's all the stories I could tell you, literally, of different things that we've chased, different situations I've been in that even to me sometimes seems crazy. And there's a lot of those. But that's basically, in kind of a nutshell, me being the nut in a shell, how it is that I got to be Wildman Phil. And because of that, how it is that I've got to do what I do and influence people, literally tens of thousands of them every year, everywhere. And hopefully even through this, continuing to do that. So, with that being said, I think I covered everything. I don't know if there's anybody on there wanting to know an actual, hey, what about this kind of thing? But I will let you know that I know I probably stirred up a lot of questions. Hopefully I've answered more questions than I've created. But if I've created more questions, I've done my job, because that's what learning is. The more I learned, the more I realized I didn't know. And the more I wanted to learn about animals, about plants, thank you, Bill Kinnison, about geology. That's dumb. Nobody cares about geology. No, I'm kidding. There's so much out there. Funny thing is, side story, I could side story all day. I'll try not to do that for you guys. When I was in college, I got my first F on a test. And not only did I get my first F on a test, it was on a double graded test. That means it had double the weight of a normal test, right? And it was shocking. I was like, oh my God. I was never an A student, okay? I was a B or a C kind of guy, right? Except in the sciences, the math, whatever I was interested in, I did real good in there. When I got into college, I took this class called Oral Communication. It's speech class. I got an A in that one too, all right? I didn't know at the time that I could talk. And, well, I knew that because I got in trouble a lot in elementary and middle school for talking all the time, but that was different. But this double F was actually in American history. That's right. It was actually on the Civil War, and it woke me up. I was like, whoa, wait a minute here. But here's the thing: I was never interested in war, civil wars, American history. I mean, I knew some of that, but I wasn't a buff on that. And I'll be honest with you, I'm not great with dates. And so I was like, well, did this happen in 1650 or 1750 or 2050? I don't know. And anyway, I ended up getting overall, I ended up with, I think, a C or B in that class. It was more of a B, I think, because I did well on my other tests, but I had to learn that specific thing. That didn't just come to me naturally. don't invite me to give a class on American history ever, okay? Yeah, it's basically going to turn into natural history, and you're going to learn about animals. Yeah, because that's my thing. But that's my point today. People ask, how long you been doing this? Well, top secret information about to be divulged here. Don't tell anybody, all right? I'm actually 47 years old. I know you're thinking, you look a day over 25. No, I know, I'm making that up. So 47 years, I started my first presentation, I was 13 years old. And I started doing this full time and started the actual business of doing it when I was 21. So 25 plus years I've been doing this. You would think I'd get it down at some point, right? Yeah, I know. Hopefully it'll happen. But with that being said, I think, do we have a couple questions that we come in? Okay, we got a question I feel want to be answered.
Did your parents ever hold your snakes, or do they now?
Yeah, I think we're breaking up. Can't hear the question. Okay, fine, I'll answer it, okay? Oh, I really hope my mom's not watching this, and actually, I know she probably is, because she's a mom, and that's what they do. And luckily, I'm doing this on Thursday, so my dad can't watch it because he has to work, but he'll watch it later. Don't listen. If there's anybody that has the last name that looks like maybe it's mine, or somebody saying, hey, I'm his mom, and she starts typing little comments, don't listen. She's probably making stuff up, okay? Yeah. But actually, that's a great question. Did my parents ever hold on? And I get that too. What do your parents do? My dad, he's an auto mechanic. He's a professional. You want your car fixed, you want your truck fixed, the man can do it, all right? Probably couldn't identify a whole lot of snakes, all right? I get that. And I know that because I get the, hey, what kind of snake was this we saw in the backyard kind of thing? And I'm like, I don't know, what kind of truck is this? What part of the truck is that? Oh, that's a master cylinder, son. Okay, thanks. It's a great thing. But here's the thing. They tolerate it. That's my answer when they're like, how did your mom deal with this? First off, her hair went white at a very young age, mostly because of my brother. I have a younger brother he's turned my hair white. That's why I have the white. It's from my younger brother, okay? I didn't have anything to do with my mom, worrying a lot. But actually, they did occasionally hold stuff. I would bring the animals in. My mom still does not know about everything that got loose in the house, because you don't share that information. No, you just find it before anybody else does. There was one time that my mom found a snake in the house, but we lived rurally, and it was a long-nosed snake. It's a very pretty snake, red, yellow, black, and stuff, and it was in the kitchen. And she calls me, she's like, hey, there's a snake in the kitchen, or something along those lines. Maybe it was more a high-pitched kind of, stamping of the feet, but I go running in there, and I'm like, oh my goodness, that is a long-nosed snake. I look at my brother, and he's like, what? I'm like, we have been trying to find a long-nosed snake forever. We go out, we spend days out in the desert. We go out at night, and we're in here never being able to find a long-nosed snake. One of the most prettiest snakes, and here we have one just comes into the house. I'm like, great. I'm like, this is so amazing. Mom, you're the best. Thank you. And we grabbed the snake, and we're like, where are we going to put it? Let's go in our room and find a place to put it. And we took it, and we put it back in its cage, and we're like, ooh, that was close. Do you think she bought it? Yeah, I don't know. She probably will say, I knew the whole time, but I knew it wasn't dangerous. I have no idea. But they were very supportive. My mom was more than tolerant of it. And there are still, things that she does now that she said, you know what, there was a point in my life I would never even look at that animal. And now she's out there, picking it up. And because she learned as well, because I did my job, I guess. So, all right.
You talked about your first animals you get. What variety and how many animals would you say you have now?
That's another thing that's kind of gone with this. Being that I was working with exotic animals, if you will, and not a whole lot of people did 25 years ago, a lot more so now. When somebody had a snake that was their kids, and then the kid went to college and they had to leave it, they didn't want to take care of it, what do? I was get rid of it. Hey, maybe that Phil guy will take it. By the way, the whole Wildman Phil part came on because my last name is Rakosi and nobody can pronounce it, nobody can spell it. And I very early on found out when I was doing interviews for magazines and newspapers that even if I give them a business card and it has my name spelled, they'll misspell it. It's just one of those names. And I'm like, this isn't going to work well, okay? And so at one point I was hanging out with a friend of mine, Chris Baxter, actually, another shout out, wonderful influence in my life, helped me a lot. She worked for a newspaper, actually, and we were hanging out one time, and I don't remember which one of us brought it up, but I was like, if we had something easier to remember, you know? And so we decided on Wildman Phil. That kind of brought a few of things that I did together to get, and I think that she was finally going like, you're nuts, man. And Psychotic Phil probably isn't going to get a lot of shows at schools. So, okay. And so we started that, which was really weird for me at first. Now it's like any other nickname, you know, and, you know, if your name's, you know, John and you go by Johnny, you know, oh, that's weird. But no, it works out. Alexander, now you're Alex or you're Xander, or, you know, your name's Bill and you go by, you know, hey you or whatever. It's kind of weird, but you figure it out. And so that's how that caught on was because as I was getting more famous and people were wanting to do things, it was real easy. Now they just screw it up by calling me Wildman Bill instead of Wildman Phil. But, you know, whatever, it's close enough, right? But that whole situation there of keeping these animals led to where I was getting animals that people were needing to get rid of because I knew how to take care of them. And it's one of those things that now has turned into, you know, I need an X amount of animals to be able to use in my shows. I usually use about 10, 12, 15 animals in a live animal show. I like to have at least 4 of each of those animals. So there's 50 animals, right? That's because if I'm doing so many shows now that if I only had one king snake and I'm using it in the show, he's living in a snake bag his whole life. But I can use him in a show for 3 or 4 days and then trade him out, use another one for 3 or 4 days. And then on a rotation, everybody's mostly living in enclosure. Well, with that being said, a few years ago, I think about 3 years ago, my middle daughter came to me one day and she says, hey, Dad, I want you to know that I was doing some research because there's this thing called the internet and stuff, and I found that there's not really any exotic pet rescue anywhere kind of in the area. So if somebody has an exotic pet, a bird or a reptile or something, and they have to get rid of it for whatever reason, they don't have any place to take it. There's dog rescues and cat rescues and, you know, stuff like that, but there's not anything for these. And she's like, can I start an exotic pet rescue? And I said, you know, I hear what you're saying. We'd be able to take care of these things. And sure, go ahead. And so she did. She started, my daughter Emily, she started Stumpy's Exotic Pet Rescue. Now that's a whole nother thing. You got to go back and watch the episode we did on Stumpy the tortoise. Yeah, Stumpy the tortoise with a wheel. He became an icon. He's actually more famous than I am, known all over the world. And he basically, because of his story, we started Stumpy's Exotic Pet Rescue. And that's what my daughter took over. She did. There's actually a Facebook page. Check it out, Stumpy's Exotic Pet Rescue. And so if people have some kind of animal they have to get rid of, now we'll take them in. They're usually not abused, okay? I mean, there's some that weren't taken care of correctly. People don't know what they're doing. But we're able to help. We're able to rehome some of these from time to time. A lot of them end up here for an extended time. But now, because of that and because of what I've done and taken in, we actually have at any given time about 220 to 250 animals. Sometimes some of them have babies. That's not planned, but it does happen. And occasionally when that happens, then, you know, we're able to rehome those and that sort of thing. But it's really helped because we don't have to rely on, you know, breeders and going out and catching stuff in the wild to be able to use these things. And it changes up. So now I can get creatures that I can use in my shows this year that I didn't have 2 years ago. And so it kind of keeps things fresh. I have a lot of the same animals in my shows that people like Stumpy the tortoise kind of has to be in them. And there's certain ones that people want to see that I do keep those in there. But anyway, I don't know if that helps you to kind of find out why I end up with that many animals, but we have. So, and I know you guys are kind of the interviewers today, and I did a lot of just telling you the story. Hopefully we covered everything. And now we'll look at the time. We went very long on today. But before we go, a couple of things. First off, you know, this is me sitting in the house relaxing, and it was kind of fun. I enjoyed this. So we're going to do one of these kind of similar. I have to go look at my schedule. I think next week. It might be the next week. But we're going to do an open mic question and answer. We're going to do, the whole episode is going to be, you ask me a question, I'll answer. And it'll be all over the place. It can be personal stuff. It can be, what about this animal or that animal or whatever. It'll be a load of fun, completely unscripted, and we'll have some fun with that. But tomorrow we're going to go back to a regular scheduled, let's see some animals, because let's be honest, you've been sitting here looking at this. That's not why you're watching this, let's be honest. No, you want to see some crazy cool creatures. So tomorrow, we're going to do, well, tomorrow's Friday, Freaky Friday. That's right. We're going to do some arthropods tomorrow. Tomorrow, we're going to do Centipede versus Millipede. Yeah, that's a lot of peds. Yeah, Centipede, Millipede, and if you're like, what's a pede? You better do some research and be ready. But don't even worry about it. That's what I'm here for. I'm going to go ahead and fill you in on what a pede is tomorrow, and we're going to look at lots of peds, and we're going to see what's dangerous, what's not, and that sort of thing. Then next week, we're going to have a lot of fun doing whatever it is that we're going to do next week. We've been working on some things where we get to actually go out into the wild again and see some stuff and that sort of thing. So, and once this whole thing's over where we have to sit and talk this way, we can still do this, but if anybody's interested in the area and we want to do some trips out in the wild and see these things, that's how I got to learn what I'm doing. Growing up as a kid, I had desert across the street and nothing else to do. I went out, ran around, found out what was out there, what was dangerous, what wasn't, and not like, hey, is that dangerous? Nope, doesn't hurt. Okay, no, that's what I had a brother for. I'm like, is it dangerous? Yeah, apparently so. Sorry, buddy. But no, it's one of those things that's a lot of fun. I think everybody enjoyed. With that being said, I'm going to go ahead and sign off pretty soon. But in case you're wondering, you're like, hey, I want to help with taking care of these animals and all that. Once again, no obligation. I hope you guys don't feel that I'm always here pitching money. Hey, send me some. But people ask because we do have an overhead of 200-something animals that we're trying to take care of here. And if you want to leave a virtual tip, you can. We'll put the information in the comments once again. These comments are, of course, going where we're going to put this. Include, if you like to Zelle, it's payment@wildmanphil.com. If you're a Venmo person, it is Wildman Phil, all one word with a capital W and a capital P. And if you're a PayPal person, which is fun to say, it's presentations@desertwildlife.net. But we'll put all that into there. Thanks again to Abiding Impressions here in Casa Grande that, most of our apparel, really helped out with our Wildman Phil stuff. By the way, we do have some Wildman Phil merchandise. If you're interested, we've had some people contacting us. Maybe if you want, let me know. Maybe we can put a little thing at the end of one of the videos or something to show you what we have, kind of thing. That way you can get something for your support, and we do appreciate that. With that being said, once again, thanks to Brave Wilderness, Coyote Peterson, Mario, Mark. You guys are great. They've been great supporters of me over the years. It's been fun working with them. And once again, get a chance to do that. And if you really want a good book to read, this is a good one. Try and read that one backward, right? Yeah, that would be Coyote Peterson, Brave Adventures. Or if you want another book, King of Stings is pretty good. Yeah, that's my buddy as well. Anyhow, another wonderful person I've had the chance to work with. They do great things. Watch them Monday through Friday, an hour before me, on their YouTube channel for an interactive live thing there as well. So, with all that being said, thank you guys. I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit more about me than you probably ever wanted to. And remember, I don't care what your interest is. It's something that you can use and keep as an important part of your life. You may not end up being able to make an exact living off of it, but if you stick with it and it's even just a side hobby thing that keeps you going, it really helps you have a good sane mind. Okay, maybe I'm not the best one to explain having a sane mind. I get that. But hopefully everybody here learned a little bed about following your passions and being able to enjoy it and help others with it. With that, thank you guys. I hope you enjoyed the show. We'll see you tomorrow where we'll talk peds. Many much peds.